Okay. Après la session. So you to go it's okay. So
Okay, yeah, forward, backward, and laser pointer.
Is it possible to have a microphone? On microphone? You prefer to have an on microphone? Okay, so.
I think he said he will.
Yeah, he will. You want to feel like a rock player, you know. You don't want to cease, to stay there, freezing. You are working where? You are working in? You are working in which country? Where is it? It's Pros. Where is it? It's in Paris or where is it?
It's a company
in the States.
Yeah.
Okay. New York.
Houston. Well,
very far.
Yeah. I'm actually from San Francisco.
Okay.
Even further.
Okay. A lot of friends.
Yeah.
No, it's okay.
Are they going to come in?
Yes, they will come in.
Nobody.
No, they will come.
Testing. Sounds good.
Yeah, we need a gong or a bell or something. Otherwise, nobody will ever come back.
Okay, so we restart. So it's we have two talks in the second half of this session. So the first talk will be given by Michael Wu. Michael Wu is the Chief AI Strategist at Pros. He's coming very far. He's from Houston, US. And today he will speak about how to start differentiating your customer experience through AI. So Michael, I think you can perhaps wait 1 minute because people are coming back now. But says we have to restart. And so what I will do, so I will basically 1 hour, 50 minutes. So it's good, it's 1 hour with questions, so which means that 50 minutes and after 50
You will stand.
yeah, we stand and then
Okay. Yeah.
conclusion.
Okay.
And then
All right. All right. Since it's very cold in this room, I am going to move around. I'm not going to stand still. I'm going to try to move around. Okay, so I'm going to start. So obviously, I'm going to talk to you how to differentiate your customer experience. But why differentiate on customer experience? So there's a report that Gartner actually published in 2014 that says, basically the new battle between company is going to be customer experience. Because everything else, they could imitate. They could copy your product, they could imitate your customer support, they could, imitate everything else. But customer experience is very, very difficult to replicate, okay? Because it's how the customer feels about you. And when they actually did a survey, what they find is that, with 300 companies that are of $1 billion revenue or more, and almost 90% of the CEOs agree that in the future, customer experience will be the new battle. It will be the ground at which you compete. Okay. So now, why is customer experience so important? Why do you think that's important? The simple answer is that it's actually very, very good for business. Okay, fortunately, there's actually already a company called Watermark Consulting. They did this analysis already. What they did is that they compare the leader in customer experience and the market average. They use standard, S&P average, 500 average, and guess what? The leader does better. And if they compare to the laggards of customer experience, they do worse. And the interesting thing about this company, Watermark, is that they did this analysis year after year after year, and they see the same result. This is 2021, right? And they did this 2019, they did this in 2015. It's the same pattern. They see this over and over again, okay? So now, hopefully, I've convinced you that customer experience is very important. Now, in 2013, and the reason is really simple. This man here is Paul Greenberg. He is essentially the father of, you call him the grandfather of CRM. Basically, he can explain this in a very simple phrase. Say, if you give customer a good customer experience, they will continue to do business with you. If you give them a bad experience, they would look for every opportunity to leave, even if they capture audience today, right? They will look for every opportunity to leave. Right? And Paul Greenberg, if you don't know him, he actually wrote the Bible of CRM, the CRM at Speed of Light. And so now, the real question for you is that what makes the experience good? What makes the experience a good customer experience? There's actually a lot of work in the industry trying to quantify customer experience. Some use Net Promoter Score or customer effort score. There's lots of ways that companies try to quantify what makes a customer experience good or bad. But they all fail to capture something. And really, when it boils down to this one simple equation here, you just have to deliver more than what the customer expects, then they'll get a good customer experience, right? So in essence, what that means is that, customer experience is really just the difference between what the company deliver and what the customer expect, okay? So in a picture, which is really, really easy to understand, is that if your customer expectation is at that level and you actually deliver at that level, you're actually going to get satisfied customer. And if you deliver more, you're going to get delighted customer. And if you actually deliver less, you're going to have, customer who complains, right? Who's disappointed. The problem today is not with how brands deliver their product or services. Because most company, if you existed for a long time, right? You've been delivering your product and services for, 50 years or something like that, 100 years or more, right? You know what you're delivering. The problem today is that customers' expectations have risen. Customers' expectations have increased, all right? So even though you are delivering the same thing you've been delivering, you're actually going to end up with not happy customer, okay? Going to end up with this disappointing customer. So customer expectation is very dynamic and volatile, right? Think about, what happened when you're shopping for a product, right? And when you see, what the market, your competitor's product, right? All of a sudden, your expectation changes completely, okay? So it's very volatile. Okay, so now one very interesting question is, do you think it's easier to achieve a good customer experience in person, or is it actually easier to achieve that online? Who says in person? Who says online? Okay, it's quite equal. I'm surprised to see this division here. Okay, so let's see what advantage each one of these have. Okay, so if you're in person, right, humans are actually very good at gauging customer expectation, right? We know what customer are actually looking for. There's a car commercial, where this person goes from one dealer to another, right? And the car salesman figured out he just wanted cookies, and they actually gave him a bunch of cookies, and he's happy, okay? So the humans are actually very, very, very good at determining what the customer wants. Do you want that upgrade? Do you want, a discount? We're very good at that, right? But what advantages online have? Online, the digital channels, you can actually access a lot more customer data that the salesperson may not have access to, okay? So you say, well, can we just use AI, right, to help me access all those data? Sure, you can use AI to do that, but that's really the wrong way to use AI. That's what we call intelligent augmentation, right? It's really IA instead of AI, right? So you're using this data to augment your intelligence to engage with a customer, okay? Now, but the problem today is that most customers are not visible to the brand, right? So if you think about how we shop, how we used to shop, we used to shop in store, in person, right? But now, people are shopping with their mobile phone, with their devices, with their tablets, right? So you may never even see the customer at all throughout the entire lifetime of the customer, okay? So, and in the post-pandemic world, this digital adoption has been accelerated too, okay? So basically, this is actually McKinsey who did this analysis. What they did is that they actually look at the online sales from 2009 all the way to 2019, right? It has a steady increase over time. But what happened when COVID happened? That happened, okay? You almost have 10 years of growth that happened in 4 months. Everybody is shifting online, okay? Now, think about what happened when you shifted online, right? If you're a brick and mortar business and you all of a sudden become an online business, right? What happens then? What happened? Any guess? I want to make this very dynamic and interactive, so hopefully, yeah? Yes, exactly, right? Your market actually gets bigger. Your market opportunity become global, right? And that's a good thing. That's a wonderful thing, right? But the problem is that your competition is also very steep, right? Now you're competing with every single online business on the planet, right? So now, how do you stand out, right? How do you stand out from such a big competition, right? That's the question, right? So in this case, it's actually very instructive to learn from leaders of e-commerce, such as Amazon, right? And Amazon actually uses a lot of machine learning and AI in their every part of their service, right? Digital service. And there's actually, if you listen to some of my talks before, right, there's actually 4 major categories of AI application. Now these are just a business kind of application, I would say, ways to kind of divide these AI and machine learning tools, okay? There's many different ways to classify these tools, but these are, I would say, business application. So major business applications, okay? So one is this perceptual AI, and the other one is internet AI, autonomous AI, and business AI. So let's talk about all of these, okay? Now, Amazon actually uses all 4 of these. So the first one is actually something that's, I would say, that everybody here probably have seen and understand, and that's internet AI. So internet AI basically is called internet AI because it uses data that we left behind when we surf the internet, okay? And it is sometimes called personalization AI because the main use case, the major use case is in personalization, okay? And with Amazon, I'm sure all of you have seen their recommender system, right? The recommender system has a very long name. It's called people who bought this also bought that. That's a very long name, right? But they're the pioneer there, right? So I don't think I need to explain this anymore, right? Basically, this is, everybody has experience with that. But what it's actually doing in terms of customer experience, what they're doing is that they actually personalize your customer experience, right? People want things to be personalized. People want things, to appear as they want it, right? So it personalizes your customer experience. So now the second class that we will talk about is this perceptual AI. So perceptual AI, sometimes they're called cognitive AI, ChatGPT, these are all perceptual AI, right? What they do is that they try to mimic the higher cognitive and perceptual function of a human being, such as vision, language, speech, all that's, what thought to be only, capable and achievable by human, right? But now machine can do them, so we call this perceptual AI, right? So with Amazon, probably know that they have a machine called, this speaker that's also a mic, right, called Alexa. Some of you probably have this at home. Now you can actually not only tell Alexa to, do things for you, you can actually tell it to order stuff for you, right? You could just tell it to buy something, and it will show up in your doorstep next day. So it makes shopping a lot easier, right? So in terms of technology, right, this boils down to some kind of, I would say, chatbot or digital assistant, or some kind of vision system, right? So with this chatbot, right, or digital assistant, you have this Alexa, but Amazon also uses vision system as well. So this is a case where Amazon actually created this store that doesn't have a checkout line, okay? You just go in there, scan your QR code, get in there, pick up the item you want, and you just walk out. Okay, I actually experimented this with some of my friends. We go in, we deliberately try to make it difficult for the vision system, right? We go in there, I scan my QR code, and then 2 of my friends actually go in following me. And then we all go to different places, pick up different items. We try to put them in our bags and put them in our clothes to hide them. And then we each come out at different time. But after everybody came out, it gets every single item correctly charged to me, right? Very, very amazing. Think about what kind of problem it has to solve, right? It has to solve a lot of problems because the store can be crowded, right? There may be, 2 of the same, 2 guys wearing the same hat or same color shirt or something like that, right? It needs to really distinguish one person from another and what you actually picked up. And this person actually needs to be able to track. This is a very challenging problem, right? But it's solving what we call a customer problem, a customer pain point, right? Because nobody likes to wait in line to check out. is solving a customer problem, right? Okay, so these perceptual AI, what does it actually do in terms of the experience of a customer? Well, it simplifies shopping, right? If you make shopping simpler, then people shop more, right? It's like credit cards. Credit card make buying stuff easier, simpler, right? So people buy more, they spend more money, right? So same idea. So basically, yeah, so let's go to the next class. So next class of AI, or the Amazon leverage, is autonomous AI. So autonomous AI is basically the AI behind the self-driving car, right? Today, the biggest application is the self-driving car, but tomorrow, it could be driving robots or drones and so on, right? So now, Amazon is not building a self-driving car yet, not yet, okay? Maybe someday they will, but they are actually leveraging this type of AI in their warehouse, in their fulfillment center, right? So there are these kind of robotic arms that are, have some rudimentary levels of intelligence, right? They know how to avoid picking up a human. They know how to pick up only things that look like a box, right? But there are also these, I would say, these shuttle bots, right? These shuttle bots are extremely intelligent. They're almost like a miniature self-driving car, right? They can actually know how to avoid collision. They need to avoid. They know how to avoid human. They even know how to stay in their own lane. Okay, so Amazons are using these to shuttle items in their fulfillment center to the human to be packaged, to be sent. Right? Before, humans have to go to the items and collect them. Right? And the Amazon warehouse is actually very, very big. It's like 2 or 3 football size. So if you want to get from one side of the warehouse to another side, it may take you half an hour, right? That's wasting a lot of time. So these robots are making it much faster for people to package the item to be sent out to the consumer, right? Okay, so now if you can actually, have these shuttle bots deploy in the warehouse, why not just deploy them out in the real world? Why not send them to deliver items to people's home? And Amazon's actually starting to experiment with that, right? They actually, they don't just send these delivery bots running, on the street. What they do is that they have an Amazon truck that brings a lot of these, delivery bots, and they will bring them to one location and then deploy them to bring the item to people's home, and then they'll, when they come back to the truck, they drive them to the next location, right? So now, if they could do that, why not, deploy them in places? What do you do with places that are difficult that's not accessible by these delivery bots? So Amazon actually are testing drone delivery as well in some of the rural parts of UK. Okay, so these are autonomous AI, right? And what are they actually doing in terms of the customer's experience? What they do is that they actually automate these logistics, right? These are logistics that typically done by these, I would say, machine that doesn't have any intelligence to it, right? But basically, these autonomous AI is giving you some kind of levels of intelligence, so they know how to not crash or run into trees or buildings and so on, right? So, and finally, I want to talk about business AI. So business AI is sometimes called decision AI as well, right? Because the biggest use case for them today is to automate these business decisions. It's decision automation, right? So Amazon actually have a couple of use cases. So one is fraud prevention, right? So Amazon used to have a big team of fraud investigators. So what these fraud investigators, what they do is that they look at the transaction, right? It's a human effort, right? They look at hundreds and thousands of these transactions and then determine whether it's fraud or not. And once they determine it's fraud, then they actually recommend some action. Right? So they actually collected, Amazon, over the year, they collected a lot of these data from these people. And what they do is that they combine these data and then train a machine learning model to essentially, once you have a new kind of transaction, they will actually look at all the context and make a recommendation to see whether this looks like a fraud or not. Okay? So this is a simple, classic machine learning problem, right? But then, what are they going to do with these fraud investigators? Amazon don't just fire them all, right? Because that would be bad, right? So these fraud investigators now, they just look at the results and see whether they actually agree or not, right? So this is actually human in the loop learning, right? And then if actually do agree, then the model knows that it's actually doing a good job, right? So this is the reinforcement learning, right? That we see before. Another use case that Amazon has is dynamic pricing, right? Amazon has like hundreds of millions of products, right? With their attributes, different attributes of the product, and they also have a price on them, okay? When they actually put these prices, historical prices out, right, the consumers are deciding whether to buy them or not, right? So the consumers are actually making a decision whether they want to buy this product based on the description, and all the different attributes of the product. So taking all this data, right, they basically can actually train another model, right? Now if you have a new product, based on the description and the attribute of that new product, right, basically they can actually recommend a price. Now, basically, they could put this price in the market and test it again, right, to see whether it's actually a good price. And finally, this is, if it's a good price, if they actually buy, then it is actually a feedback loop that closes and teaches the model that it's actually the right thing to do, right? And Amazon actually reprice their product approximately every 10 minutes, every single product. There's no pricing team in this world that can actually keep up with all the changes. So what they do is that they actually just, look at all the very dramatic changes, like price change that are more than 25% or more than 50%, right? And they actually look at them and say, does it make sense to increase the price so much or change the price so much, right? And when you actually talk to them and say, when you actually talk to them, we ask them, like, what if you miss something? And they say, like, we don't really care if we miss something, because if we miss something, it's only going to be around 10 minutes. The next 10 minutes is going to get repriced. Okay, so even if you make a mistake, right, you don't lose very much, because you only, for example, if you set the price too high, right, most likely you're not going to sell that product, right, because this price is too high, right? You're just not going to get any sales in the next 10 minutes, right? And then the model is going to know that this price is too high and readjust up those prices. Okay, so that's business AI or decision AI, right? So what it's actually doing is that it's actually optimizing decisions, right? So traditionally, there's actually human pricing analysts to look at all these products, right, and actually determine what the price should be, what the market price should be, right? Now this AI is actually not only automating it, but actually optimizing it, okay? All right, so now what did these AI do in terms of the customer experience, right? So obviously personalizing the customer experience, right, will increase personalization, right? It makes the experience much more personalized, right? But what about the other AIs, other classes of AI, right? So in the case of the perceptual AI, it reduces customer resources. It makes it simpler for them. It requires less effort and less time for them to actually buy, right? It reduces the resource investment from the customer. Same thing as autonomous AI. You have to wait less time, right? It's a less time investment, right? And finally, here with the decision AI, with the business AI, right? It also reduces your customer resources as well. Think about, why do people shop? Why do people shop? Why do people go online? And whether it's online or offline, why do you shop? You shop because you want to look for the right price, right? But if I could offer you the price that's perfect the minute you actually see the item, most people would just buy, right? And this is especially the case in the B2B scenario, right? In the B2C world, right, consumer always want the lower price, right? But in the B2B world, a lot of people would just buy if it's the right price, right? So it actually reduces the time that's needed for people to shop. You don't have to waste time to shop for the right price, okay? And it also increases the personalization as well, because the price that is offered is now the right price that you would offer, that a business would offer, right? Okay, so now the best customer experience is really the one that's actually most personalized, but also require the least customer investment of resource, okay? Right? People want things to be personalized, but very often it is the case that you need to spend some time or some effort or some resources to get that personalization, right? You need to customize what you need, what you like, right? But what Amazon is doing with all these AI and ML technology is that they actually could personalize that for you without you investing more, right? Okay, so basically now we can actually know that the optimal customer experience is actually the one that actually is most personalized and the customer resource investment is actually minimized. Okay, so when you're dealing with this invisible customer, it's very important to let AI do what it's supposed to do, is to let AI automate this experience, right? So now, so the question is, how do you start doing that? How do you start? Where do you start? Okay, so I've developed an AI adoption maturity curve. This is just from a lot of the work that I work with companies and doing some consulting works as well. And so this adoption maturity curve has 6 different stages. The first stage is digital transformation. Digital transformation is something that you heard a lot. Every company is doing some form of digital transformation because it's the first stage for this AI adoption maturity curve because it's all about generating the raw data for your machine learning and AI, right? If you have a process that is not digitized, right, then you don't have data to train your AI to mimic what humans actually do, right? So the first step is digital transformation is basically you digitizing the work so that you actually, your physical work become digital work. That means the process and every step of it and all the decisions that you make are captured in the form of digital data, which you can use to train the AI to mimic what humans actually do in those situations, right? And when you actually do that, company typically go through like 3 different stages. The first is what we call descriptive analytic. The first thing that companies run into when they do digital transformation is they have lots of data. So the first thing they do is that they just summarize those data, right? Because no one can actually look at all the data. So what they do is that they just summarize it. So this is done by descriptive analytics. And this is just basically any dashboard, any kind of report that you see is probably some kind of descriptive analytic underneath it, right? And once you actually have enough of these data, right, you can actually build some kind of model that can actually predict the future trend of these these metrics that you're actually measuring, right? So then you go into what we call the predictive analytics. You're going from purely descriptive, just summarizing the data, to using those data to make a forecast, make a prediction of what will happen, right? So now, the next thing that company actually do is that like, well, I mean, being able to predict is great, but sometimes that's not good enough. And especially when there's your action space is huge, okay? If I tell you the world's going to end tomorrow, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? There's millions of things that you could do, right? But if I say that, to maximize your chance for survival, you need to buy and store canned foods or build bunkers and stuff like that, or hide in the basement. Then there's something that's very tangible, very actionable, right? If there's having, I would say, a predictive analytic is great. Don't get that wrong. But sometimes it's not good enough in the business world, right? Business, they actually need to know what to act and how to act. And sometimes predictive analytics is actually not very actionable, okay? So the next thing the company go through is what we call predictive analytics. Prescriptive analytics, right? The next stage beyond prescriptive analytics is prescriptive. They will prescribe you some actions to do rather than, just telling you what the future is going to be like, right? I'm telling you, not only telling the future, but I'm telling you what to do to optimize some kind of outcome, right? Okay, so now, once you're able to do prescriptive analytics, you're ready to move on to the next stage of this AI adoption maturity curve. Next stage is what we call exchanging data for automation. This is actually the first stage that most companies have to deal with AI and machine learning, right? Basically, now they have a bunch of data, right? Keep in mind that now they have enough data, they could actually prescribe some action for them to optimize some kind of decision, some kind of outcome, right? If you could optimize some kind of decision, why don't you just automate that? Why don't you just automate that, right? The classic example is that a GPS navigation system is a very simple prescriptive analytic system that we are all very familiar with every day. We use it all the time, right? What is actually telling you to do? If you tell me you want to go from A to B, they will prescribe you a sequence of action getting from A to B, right? So that is a prescriptive analytic tool that we use all the time. But if it's already able to tell you what to do to get from A to B, the next step is they could just automate that, right? That's what a self-driving car does. It's automating those actions and decisions to bring you from A to B, right? Okay? So this is usually now, I would say, used a lot in these point decision automation, right? So for example, like what price to set your product, how long to run your marketing campaign, who do you target in marketing campaign. So all these are decisions that normally have to be decided by some like human experts who have some knowledge in the domain, right? And now if you actually have enough data on how they make those decisions in the past, you can actually train a machine to mimic those decisions of a human, right? And now it could just automate it for you. All right? Okay, so obviously this probably is not going to be very good initially, right? So when you actually do this, the decision that they make is based on basically the available data that you have, right? You probably won't capture every scenario that you will encounter in the business world, because business changes all the time, right? So the next stage is what we call learning from humans, right? This is the human-in-the-loop learning, right? So this is a stage where, humans are constantly giving feedback to these AI and machine learning systems to improve their algorithm, to make them essentially teach them how to deal with these edge cases that you have never seen before, where you have very little data of, right? If you don't have data to train the machine how to respond and how to behave in those scenarios, they're not going to know how to respond when they actually encounter that scenario, right? So basically, humans will have to take over, right, and say, okay, now this is what I would have done, right? But guess what? You already have digital transformation, right? So as a human is actually doing it, you're capturing data again, and you're actually essentially teaching this machine how to behave, right, in this situation that you have never seen before. All right? Okay. So the next stage is essentially this, what we call full automation and job shift, right? So as you can see that as you do this stage 3 over and over again, right? It's learning from human to deal with all the different edge cases, right? Pretty soon, your machine is pretty good, right? You can actually deal with pretty much all the edge cases you could ever see, right? So what does humans do? What do humans do then? We shift our job, right? We just automate it, right? So this is a situation that's actually not too different from the situation of, for example, you hire an intern or hire a new employee, right? You train those intern and new employee to do what you do. What happens when they are able to perform your task? You basically promote them, right? To take over your job. And what do? You shift your job. You become a manager, right? Right? There's nothing to be afraid that it's going to, displace your job, right? You just move on to something bigger, something more meaningful, right? Something more strategic, right? Okay, so stage 1 and 4, these stages are typically internally focused. They focus on, I would say, the internal operation of the business, right? There are actually some use cases in customer support that could start as early as, in stage 3, okay? So for example, they have a chatbot that actually do customer support. They answer questions that customer call in about their product, right? So, but then the thing is that the humans have to be there to take over if the machine's actually not able to resolve the problem, right? Otherwise, you end up with a poor customer experience again, right? So there are some use cases, but generally they tend to be internally focused. And when you actually get to beyond stage 4, right? This machine is actually pretty good, right? It's able to handle pretty much all the situations that you could ever see, right? And the humans actually allow it to fully automate and operate by itself, right? So stage 5 is this last mile delivery, right? Last mile delivery actually involves a lot of use of autonomous AI using robotics, right? To deliver the product and services to the end user. This is the final step. I mean, in the digital world, we could do a lot of things. We could shop, we could customize a product, we could have it shipped to us, right? But eventually, that product had to be shipped to us, right? You can't download, a mouse, right? A clicker. I mean, when you buy a meal, when you order a meal online, you can't eat it digitally, right? That's not going to happen anytime soon. So somebody had to bring that to you, right? If you order someone to clean, make an appointment for someone to clean your window, someone have to come to your home and clean that window, right? So these are, I would say, the last mile delivery. A lot of it actually, if it's already in the digital world, this is definitely, I would say, very easy to be accomplished. But a lot of time, these actually involve things and actions and tasks in the physical world. So those need to be essentially be performed by robots in the future, right? All right, what's the last stage, right? So last stage is essentially what we call an AI augmented economy, right? So if you have these in this world, right, where you can have essentially machines can operate and interoperate and talk to each other, negotiate and do business, right? Basically, we are in a very different world then, right? Maybe the world can operate so efficiently that, people do not need to work, right? I'm not saying that people will not work, right? They may still work if they like to work, but they may not need to work for survival, to survive, right? There may be enough efficiency that, people could, they would generate enough, I would say, value that the government can actually provide something called a universal basic income for everybody, right? So people do work that they're truly passionate about and not do work just because they need to do it for survival, right? So, okay, so these are the 6 stages of kind of AI adoption maturity, right? So now, this adoption journey actually is full of challenges, okay? There are lots and lots of challenges along the way. Lots and lots of challenges, right? So if you heard like anything about business, that they can only deal with like 3 to 5 things at once, right? This is actually way too much for any business to deal with, right? So what I did was like I basically say if all along this journey, if you were to only solve 2 problems, what would those be? Okay, so at the beginning of digital transformation, a lot of it is actually alignment of your team, and it's a build versus buy decision, right? And I think a lot of people understand that because this is something that business people do very, very often. And when you actually, the first stage where you actually exchange data for automation, because this is the first time that people have machine make decision on their behalf, right? I'm letting a machine to make decision for me, right, instead of me. So this is something that, brings up the issue of trust, right? How can I trust the AI, right? If I'm going to let it make decision for me, I better trust it a lot, right? If I'm going to let an AI make decision for example, invest for me or drive me home, right? I better trust it enough to not lose all my money or bring me home. You have to trust it enough to bring me home safely, right? Otherwise, I'm not going to do it, right? So, okay. So this is a lot of times, this is where the adoption challenges is very challenging, okay? Because, it's the first time we have to learn to give up our control on the final decision-making power, to a machine, right? So adoption is the issue here. Now, the next stage is basically, data privacy and feedback usage, right? Learning from human sounds easy, but it's actually not that easy, especially when you have privacy concerns, right? How do you learn from human without violating people's privacy, right? And this feedback usage is also not as trivial either, right? Because, I was just talking to someone from the insurance business, right? This is, I think AXA team is here. So feedback, most of the time when you're actually in school, when you learn machine learning, right, all the training data is there. But in the real world, the training data may not be there. What are you training? I mean, how do you know if an insurance policy is a good insurance? You may not know until much, much later, right? If you're talking about a life insurance, you may not get the answer until the person dies, right? Which may be 30, 40 years later, right? So that's not a trivial problem, right? How do you actually use those feedback, right? And they may not, when they're not available. So as you go to this stage 4, this full automation and job shift, right? There's a lot of problem obviously with human resources, right? What do you do with those humans when you actually, shift them, when you actually have full automation, right? And obviously, when you actually shift the job to a machine, when the machine is actually doing that fully automated, who's accountable if something happened, right? If you make a wrong decision for business, right? For example, a pricing decision. If you price something wrong and now nobody's buying the product, who's accountable? Because the machine is doing that, right? There's no one person who's actually making those decisions. Who's accountable, right? So that's actually a problem there, right? So not last year, but the 5th stage, where we actually deal with the last mile delivery, right? There's a lot of problem with ethics and legal, right? How do you actually deal with, when you have robots running around the street, right? Do you want to run over an old lady or a young boy, right? Those kind of decision comes in when you have these hypothetical scenarios. Those are not easy decisions to make, right? Comes down to ethics. It turns out that different countries actually have different, standards. There's actually people who study this and said, in Europe, some people favor women, or some people favors young children or old people, right? So different regions of the world actually have different standards on this. These are actually not easy. And finally, when you actually have this AI augmented economy, the biggest problem that will come up is equality. Because now, anytime you have these technology, right, the haves and have-not create this huge gap, right? Those business that have those technology, have access to those technology, is going to be able to outperform those who don't dramatically, right? How do you have equality? I mean, we already see this today, right? For example, data scientists and engineers, they in the Bay Area where I'm come from, I'm from San Francisco, so they make so much more money than anybody else in the Bay Area. That is kind of unthinkable, right? It's a little bit kind of inflated a little bit, So it's created a lot more, I would say, inequality, right? So, and that often can lead to problem, right? So there's a lot of societal impact that we probably have not even thought of, right? And with this AI augmented economy, and we need to think about that. Okay, so keep in mind that in the early stage of this adoption journey, that a lot of these problems are, I would say, business management problem. As you move on to the kind of middle stage, right, these become data science or governance problem. And as you move to even the later stage, these become human behavior and psychology problems. And finally, when you actually move to the last few stages, these are legal, ethic, and even philosophical problems that very often data scientists don't know how to solve, okay? So data science will be a very interdisciplinary discipline in the future, right? Especially when you're dealing with these AI and machine learning systems. So keep in mind, these problems actually exist, all of these problems exist throughout this entire journey, right? I'm just saying that if you're a business that can solve all this problem at once, great, solve them all, right? But if you can't, these are the, at different stages, right? These are the probably the best time to solve those solutions, right? To solve those problems, because they're have obvious benefit for those stage. Okay, so the question is, where are most companies today? Where are most companies today? Where do you think they are? Yeah, so most companies are still struggling with the digital transformation, right? And I would say that quite a few companies now are actually adopting AI and machine learning solutions for point solutions, right? So this is where I would say this, AI adoption, AI trust and adoption is the biggest problem. Because very often, to give customer a good customer experience, not only you need to have consumer-facing AI or machine learning product and services, company have to operate differently too, right? Inside the company, they also have to leverage AI to operate a little differently, okay? So now, because this is the first stage that, as I said before, right? This is the first stage, the first time that humans have to give up their power or their control of the final decision, right, to a machine. So it's actually very, very uncomfortable for a lot of companies, right? For consumer, this is usually not a problem. But for a company, this is actually something that they're not used to, right? So very often when you have an AI technology that's actually used by a business owner, right? So most of those decision AIs that I talk about, those business AI, they are called business AI because they're used by business users, right? They're called decision AI because they're often automate some kind of business decisions, right? Very often people don't use them, right? Very, very often people are reluctant to use them. One is maybe because of fear, okay? Because if I use a system and actually I made a wrong decision, right? Am I going to get fired? Right? And there's also like I would say a fear of kind of losing control, right? If the AI is actually doing that, what am I here for? Why do they need me? Okay? So very often people in the business world, even though you have those AI technology, even though you could prove and demonstrate the superiority of their decisions, very often business don't adopt. This is a problem, right? So, so as you see, there's actually a lot of, I would say, challenges along this journey. I won't have time to go through every one of these topic with you. That's much longer courses, but I will just talk about one of these. Okay. So today I will actually show you how to drive mass AI adoption within the enterprise, okay? Which is something that you probably have to deal with if you are trying to, if you have an AI solution that's actually used by business user. Okay, so throughout the course of my consulting career, I have developed basically an enterprise kind of technology adoption kind of a strategy, okay? It's actually works. It's not specific to AI. It actually works, back in the age when social media is very popular, or gamification when they're really popular. So it's actually an enterprise technology adoption strategy, right? And it actually works very well for AI as well, okay? So now this AI adoption strategy has essentially 3 phases, right? Imagine, say, these are everybody in your company that you're trying to drive them to use this AI technology, okay? Say it's some kind of sales automation. Let's say these are the salespeople of your company, your sales department, right? You're trying to use this AI-driven sales automation tool, okay? And within any company, there's always, I would say, stellar performers. These are the top sales guys. Okay, so we're going to label them with a star, so to label that they are the top salespeople, the stellar performers. And there's always some people who are, I would say, excited about AI, right? So we're going to color these with orange, right? It's the same color that the AI there, right? And there's also some people with different levels of motivation or enthusiasm for AI, right? Some people are kind of say, I'm somewhat excited about it. I'm not sure if I'll use it, right? Some people are actually afraid, right? Some people say, am I going to lose my job? Or if I make a wrong decision, what will happen, right? So some people are literally scared, okay? So now, the first stage of this AI adoption strategy is what we call a secret pilot. Okay, secret pilot is called secret because it's not made public to the rest of this sales team. It's a secret, right? And the thing is, how do you actually select the people in this secret pilot program, right? The secret pilot is actually designed for success, right? Because you actually pick the people who are stellar performers already, but who are also enthusiastic about AI, to learn about AI, right? Okay, so now the reason you want to do this secret pilot, typically they're pretty small team because the stellar performers within your company, they're typically a pretty small group, right? You don't have everybody. Usually, not every single one of them is going to be the top sales. There usually will be a few, top salespeople, right? And you have to find the people who are the top sales, who are also interested and enthusiastic about learning to use this AI tool, okay? So that's going to be an even smaller group, right? So, and it's actually a good thing to be small because it's easier to kick off, right? And there's also less disruption if something goes wrong, right? And now, with every technology deployment that I work with, right, there's always some problem. There's always some problem that you just cannot imagine, okay? So there's every technology deployment, there will always be some hiccups, okay? And with this secret pilot, you contain the damage, right? Because the rest of the team don't know about it, right? They don't have to know about it, right? And they also give you time to basically perfect this rollout process, right? So it give you time to work out all these hiccups so you don't have this problem anymore, right? You address them, right? So now, once you actually address all the these problems on your deployment process, right? Then because these are already stellar performers, and they also have the help of this AI and machine learning technology, what will happen? They will become even more amazing performers, right? They're going to they're going to be able to achieve something that's humanly impossible, right? So that's when you actually move into phase 2, right? The phase 2 is what we call recognition and socialization, right? Now, no more secret, right? The secret is out because now these people are obviously, performing. If they're salespeople, right, they're going to probably close some of the biggest deal that the company have ever seen in their entire history, and probably close more deal than ever possible, before, right? So now it's also a way for these leaders in the company to recognize them, right? Recognize them and also tell people that, hey, you know what? They're able to achieve these humanly impossible performance because they also have the help of AI, right? Or machine learning, right? So now you create this kind of recognize their performance and socialize their success. And the interesting thing is that once you socialize their success, right, these people don't work in isolation, right? They have friends, they have colleagues in company, right? Word spread, right? Word spread. And the thing about that, as word spread, people actually become curious, right? They become curious. They become curious. They wanted to actually learn more about why are these people able to perform so extraordinarily well, okay? Because, some of the, for example, if you're a salesperson, right, so you could say, I've been working in this company for 20 years. I cannot perform as this new guy here who just joined, right? And how is that possible, right? Because, you become curious, right? So when you actually become curious, right, it's a good opportunity to essentially establish some kind of institute, some kind of learning or some kind of seminar, to educate people, right? So how good your leader create this kind of curiosity depends on how good you are with communication, right? So you need to create this curiosity to facilitate this kind of, I would say, learning, right? And finally, yeah, you want to create opportunities to learn more, right? When people are curious, that's when it's the best for them to learn new things, right? So they could say, you know what, this actually, you can actually learn about how to use this AI to help you perform better in your job, right? So, basically, over time, more and more people actually will have more and more enthusiasm, right? And then you go into phase 3, right? Phase 3 is what we call an opt-in gate. The opt-in gate is basically another kind of, I would say, mentoring program, right? The gate is called opt-in gate because there is a gate that's designed to be very narrow. That anybody can actually get in there into this program, but not everybody can get in at the same time. Okay, so who gets into this program in the beginning, right? Well, the secret pilot people are the first group, right? So now the next group that goes in, basically, you can actually use the same strategy, right? You create this exclusivity, right? Because you say that not everybody can get in. Now people become more curious. They say, I want to get in, because salespeople tend to be very competitive, right? So if you say they can't get in, they actually want it more, right? So you use this exclusivity to drive desire, and you also ensures proper training, right? Because not everybody can get in, right? Because now, if you say the next group that goes in, say these 3 people, right? They have a mentor, right? The 3 people who are in the secret pilot, they know how to use this system really well. They become the mentor of these new group that come in. Right? So you ensure that people know how to use these technology, right? And the next group that comes in, now you can have, instead of having 3 people, now we can have 6 people, because now we have 6 people who know how to use the system, right? Already. So you get this kind of, doubling every time, right? So which is exponential. So very quickly, you actually build a very large community of practice within your enterprise, right? So people know who to consult and who to go to when they have problem. Okay. Now, okay, and finally, I would say that this is as you get to this doubling every time, what you will eventually reach some kind of critical mass, right? When you reach this critical mass, then basically everybody will adopt, right? Once you reach some critical mass, nobody wants to be left behind, right? Nobody wants to, everybody's seeing everybody else is doing this. Nobody wants left behind, right? So everybody, once you reach this critical mass, everybody jumps on board, right? And it can be helped, right, facilitated when you actually have education early, right? Basically, this is probably in stage 2, right, in phase 2, right, when people actually are being recognized and socialized about their success. This is actually the best time to have this education, right? And because, ultimately, what people are afraid of is actually not the AI itself. It's actually the fear of unknown. So if people actually understand how AI actually works, how AI could help them, they are actually less reluctant to adopt, right? It actually reduces fear. And finally, it also drive what we call the convergence of theory and practice, right? People can actually see, how, I would say, the practice, the theory of AI, right, in theory, how they actually translate to performance of their colleagues and their friends, right, which is real, right? It's not just I theorize this, I'm going to say this is going to work. It actually works, right? People could see that. Okay, so this is actually how do you drive mass enterprise AI adoption within a company. So this is only one of the stage. There's actually a lot more challenges, but I won't have time to cover that. But this is actually the first step. So I think if you get through this step, you will have more opportunity to address the future problems later. All right, this is all I have. Thank you. Yeah. Is someone bringing the mic?
So hello, thank you for this amazing presentation.
I really appreciate it. So as you know, that's adopting an AI solution. It's very expensive in terms actually of hiring, also in terms of hardware, in terms of a lot of things. Okay. So my question is about how we can give access to small business and small startup.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Yeah, startups and small business, I think right now it's a challenge, because you're fighting with a large enterprise for talent and also for compute resources, right? But as any technology, I think over time, they will become commoditized, okay? Think about like computers or, I don't know, 70 years ago, right? It's the big company have web computers or something like that. But now, every startup have computers, right? So I think and there will be more, I would say, accessible and also easier to adopt and cheaper too, because, that's the kind of as any technology progress and become more mature, right? Because everybody wants to come and provide those technology to people, right? So it actually drive the price down because there's more supply. So it's a matter of time. I think yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for the presentation. I have a few questions. The first one is the equation, the user experience equals what's delivered minus what's expected. How can a company find a compromise between maximizing its gains and at the same time keeping a good user experience by not raising the price as much as possible? And the second question is, as AI becomes more and more developed and gets integrated into decision-making, there come trust issues that you discussed, and the need of more robust data governance approaches rises. So if the data governance approaches do not keep up with the speed of development of AI, should we decelerate AI? Or which would be a form of deceleration of science, or should we just push it as much as possible even if the data government approaches do not keep up?
Okay, let me answer the first question first. So you're saying, let me see if I remember.
The compromise between...
compromise between the cost and a good customer experience, right? So I think you should not, I would say that, a lot of times company would trying to cut costs, right? And they end up like, okay, if you think about this as a long game, right? I would say optimize for customer experience, because people have already demonstrated that with their stock performance, right? It actually, on the long run, company win, right? If they actually optimize. So it's actually an investment too, right? Companies should, I think if there's one thing that you need to invest on providing a good customer experience, because that has long-term consequences on profitability and valuation of the company as well, okay? So it doesn't mean that in the short term you will actually gain. If you only trying to, I don't know, if you have a competitors of right there competing with you, right, and you head to head, right, maybe you want to do something short term to undercut them or something like that, to cut costs, but very quickly you need to kind of switch back to this long-term thinking, right? So I would say that's probably a better move. So the second question is the data governance. What if they don't keep up, right? So yeah, so I would say that data governance is important. It is important because that actually translates to some level of trust, right? If you don't have a strong governance in your company, right? It's hard for people to trust the I would say the algorithm that's built from it, right? People have been saying it's actually the data is actually, if I can't trust the data, how can I trust the algorithm that's trained from the data, right? So yeah, I would say that you do need that. I mean, what does that answer your question, or is there some
So it's going to be treated as a form of threat, like nuclear bombs. It's a form of science, but we regularize it, and we do not wish for it to develop the maximum possible, because it's a form of threat to humanity. Is this going to be seen like this, AI, in the future?
You mean a threat to the humanity?
Yeah, and thus regulated and not given the
Well,
maximum.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think AI is there to help us, not as a threat. I mean, the only threat I would say exists is not so much as, a lot of people think about AI creates this existential threat, right? Existential threats are scary because you feel like if AI decide to kill us, right, we have no chance. We have absolutely no chance, right? But why would the AI want to do that, right? I mean, you have to think about it. And you have to think about part of it is actually really our own responsibility as well, right? Because these AIs, these ML or AI, right? They train with data, right? But where do those data come from? They come from us, right? We make some decision in the past, right? So we created those data, and we use those data to train these machines, right? So in some way, I would say that it's our responsibility to be a good role model for this AI to learn, right? To learn the right thing to what it means to be human, right? Rather than, threatening to kill us, right? And I would say that, the best way to protect us against AI from killing us is that we need to learn how to not kill each other first, right? So, and there is some threat. I would say that the threat is more around the pace of adoption, right? Because the pace of innovation, think about this, right? AI is an innovation, right? And it's already created a lot of disruption, and people cannot adapt to it quickly enough, right? So imagine if there's AI is using, creating other innovations in medicines or material science or in everything, right? There will be changes in every aspect of our life all the time, right? And maybe I think there will be a challenge, but I don't think it's not it cannot be overcome. I think with AI, they can also teach us, learn what's important, and upskill us as well. So, yep, thank you.
Sorry, because it was very interesting. So the next speaker, so we have two short talks now. So the first talk will be given by Alon Rozen from Ecole des Ponts Business School. And Alon will speak about, so you get your, okay, we'll speak about how AI will disrupt the content economy. And the second talk will be given by Jeremie Brabet-Adonajlo, and it's about data augmentation in industrial context. Okay, so first, Alon, so you have, I think, 20 minutes now, or? Okay.
Can I get the slides? Diapo. Je peux voir les diapos, s'il vous plaît?
Ça, des diapos.
Okay, well, while the slides are coming, hopefully they'll be there. Just a quick word for myself. I'm Alon Rozen. I'm the Dean of the Ecole des Ponts Business School, also the CEO, also a professor of innovation, also a student, also a board member, also an entrepreneur, an investor, a service provider, and also a consumer like all of us. And in terms of AI and generative AI, for example, all my different personas have very different attitudes vis-a-vis AI, going from extreme excitement to different forms of worry or anxiety. And so my talk was supposed to be how AI will disrupt, and I changed it to how it's disrupting because it's going so fast that the impact is quite amazing. Just to give you an idea about the speed of adoption the first week that ChatGPT came out, so a form of generative AI, and operated by the OpenAI.com, OpenAI. They went from 1 million queries within 1 week, or actually, let's say 1 million users signed up and registered with 1 week, and they expect by the end of 2023 to be at over 1 billion. So you can see the speed of adoption is just amazing. And on the query side, the number of monthly users also went from something like 2 million to 300 million in less than a month. Again, just to give you the size of the phenomena. And what's pretty amazing is that, you know, ChatGPT and generative AI is not a technological revolution. It's more of an evolution and just good packaging of technologies that have been around for quite some time. But what's fascinating is that it's just become this tipping point in terms of awareness from any of us in terms of consumers, as students, teachers, CEOs, of just, wow, this technology is now ready for prime time, and it can actually help me in my day-to-day. And journalists can understand it and use it, and so it's good and very buzzworthy. And that's more of the revolution, is just how much people are now saying, oh my God, there's a use case that I can use this for my life to make it better today. It's kind of like the ultimate productivity hack for a lot of people, and CEOs and startuppers and investors are racing to find what we can do with it. And so I'll talk about 4 different aspects of the impact of AI. One of the first is just notion of AI replacing a lot of different functions that we have in life. So I give you the quick example that, you know, people are already using ChatGPT, and actually just maybe I'll you know, put one theory into my talk, but it's a very simple one. Clayton Christensen from Harvard Business School, who is also the author of disruption theory, which is very relevant to ChatGPT. He also had another theory that he kind of coined, which is called job to be done theory, saying that any kind of consumer or user of any product, service, or solution is actually hiring that to do some kind of a job. And what's amazing today is to see what people are hiring ChatGPT to do. So some people are hiring ChatGPT to play the role of a sports coach, a nutritionist, a psychologist. And it's like, ChatGPT, can you talk to me as if you're a behavioral psychologist? And then, why am I so sad? You know, or some of the questions that we're seeing on ChatGPT. You know, asking ChatGPT, could you interpret my dream for me last night? And so we're really seeing this amazing replacement of a lot of subjects, psychologists, coaches, life coaches, whatever it may be, has already begun, and people are looking for all of these use cases for what they can do with this. The other side is the very positive side of AI, is it really enhances what we can do. And anybody who's played with this technology can see it, and can see it very quickly. And here again, I'll give you an example. You know, preparing this talk, I said, hey, can you give me the equivalent of a 10-slide presentation of how AI will ... Sure. Here's a rough outline of what the presentation might look like. I got the 10 slides in about 10 seconds, and I said, well, can you give me the content for each? And then I asked actually for the actual slides, and then it said, oh, actually, I can't give you pictures, but there's a different, like ChatBA, formerly called ChatBCG, Totem, even Beautiful, Canva, others that you can generate the images on. So already you can see enhancing the job of like a knowledge worker. Instead of spending hours preparing a presentation, in a few minutes you have exactly what you need. You add your own personal touch, and voila. And other areas, for example, a friend of mine, Nicholas Granatino, has been doing interviews of ChatGPT. He's a consultant, and he consults on very different areas, including on deep tech. And he's started using his series on Twitter where he interviews ChatGPT on different subjects in order to go very deep into his understanding of the subject. So it was on like protein folding. Here he did his 7th one on the resource curse. And so it's also enhancing his job as a consultant. And it's also allowing other people to benefit from that. So it's creating his content. At the same time, it's deepening his learning. And it's allowing him to consult in areas where he might have been a little bit out of his depth without the help of ChatGPT. Another area is the more maybe violent flavor of, and the downside of generative AI is there's a lot of disruption going on. So another friend of mine owns a consulting firm in the UK, and I asked in a WhatsApp group that we have how this ChatGPT is impacting people's business, and I was getting all kinds of feedback. But one of them from my friend who has this consulting firm, he said, "Well, we just fired 4 junior analysts this week because their job until now was to help the senior partners prepare presentations. And ChatGPT is so good, why would I pay people £100,000 a year to do that?" And so for him, already the disruption is he no longer believes that they need junior analysts to do that kind of work. And we'll be seeing a lot of this job shift that Michael referred to in a lot of different areas. And this disruption, here's another example, is of business models. So Google had an oh shit moment, or is having an oh shit moment with ChatGPT, because they realized that this is really putting into question their own business model. I think that Google has a lot of its own AI equivalent or superior to ChatGPT, but they can't put it onto the market because it would kill their search business. And the search business actually means that they're addicted to advertising. So one of the interesting things here to be seen will ChatGPT break finally the hold, which I think is very negative in the Western world, which is very different in China, for example. We're addicted to ad-driven business models. And ChatGPT, already we know, they already have a $42 a month professional option that's already started to come out in kind of a beta version, but we already know the pricing. So for about $500 a year, you can have your ChatGPT, priority searches, et cetera, and people are preferring that to Google searches. Also for Google, if they tried to add simply just kind of a chat GPT-like option, which they could tomorrow, to their searches, what you need to know is that this is like 7 to 10 times more expensive to provide than just a regular Google search. And so it changes the business model, it changes the funding, and it makes Google's whole business that's built on advertising very shaky. Then there's other forms of disruption. For example, for us, so I mentioned my different roles. As a business school, like we have doctoral programs. And part of the doctoral programs is, writing articles to be a doctoral project. When we do a DBA compared to a PhD, we're very practice-oriented, which means it's mostly about practice and a little bit about theory. That is a perfect sweet spot for generative AI. And so how will we be able to validate the knowledge of a doctoral student when instead of taking 6 months to do a literature review, this is something, by the way, that I did my own experience. I'm writing an article on circular economy. It took me about 6 months to collect all of the top articles in the field from the top thinkers, connect to those thinkers on ResearchGate, and collect the materials and prepare a literature review. And I went on to Elicit Research, which uses generative AI for the research domain. And it took 35 seconds for Elicit Research to find the top 15 articles in my domain. So it was circular economy business models. And out of the top 15 that they gave me, 12 were the ones that I'd identified, and 3 I didn't even know about. So in 30 seconds, the equivalent of my 6 months was gone. And that's when we talk about enhancing and replacing, just the time saving that ChatGPT can do for us is just mind-blowing. But then again, as the dean of a business school, saying, okay, this is a game changer. And we have to figure out how to validate things differently. We have to think about the whole learning process. I'm also on the board of different schools, and they're thinking about, we have to completely rethink how we educate. Critical thinking obviously has to be a big part of this, but we can't use essays anymore as homework assignments. We have to do this very differently. And so it's disrupting so many businesses and so quickly that it's very interesting. I mean, I think Michael talked about the adoption cycle and the rapidity of the accelerating innovation, but I think it's very interesting when, as a society, we have to ask ourselves important questions like, how do we rethink education? It's not easy answers, but it's interesting questions to ask. And ChatGPT, and that's why this is such an important tipping point, is making so many businesses ask these questions at the same time that societally we'll be having to take a step forward to figure this one out. In terms of creating, and this is where as an entrepreneur, as a professor of innovation, I'm very excited. And it's not just me. If you think about generative AI startups, we're already hot with venture capitalists. ChatGPT just poured gasoline onto the fire. This was from January 6th, so just for a couple of weeks ago. One of the things you need to know, to create the equivalent of a ChatGPT, it's actually quite cheap. Everything in relative terms. It's like $10 million, and you can create like a verticalized ChatGPT, but it's very expensive to run. The computation costs are very expensive, as I mentioned earlier, much more expensive than, let's say, search. But that $10 million mark is like the sweet spot for most venture capitalists, for big corporates. And so it's not difficult to create new ideas and try to run them, and investors are extremely excited about it, and venture capitalists are pouring billions into this field. And so in terms of creating, I think we're going to see some really amazing business models coming out, improvements on ChatGPT, but maybe verticalized into different sectors, and much better precision than what we have. We already have AI that detects AI, and so it's a really exciting kind of frontier moment in terms of explosion of new businesses and new business models that I think we'll all appreciate and benefit from. Different speakers today talked about challenges. A different kind of spin on this, like for example, ethics. Like ChatGPT has done a much better job than, let's say, Google or Facebook, Meta before, in putting out public kind of facing generative AI that doesn't slip into kind of ethical, murky areas. But people are finding hacks to go around it. So if you say, give me the arguments of a bigot, they'll see that as negative, and you won't get the answer. And ChatGPT will say, sorry, I can't go there. But if you ask them, how could I counter the arguments of a bigot or a racist or a sexist or anti-Semite, it would see that as a positive and give you the counter arguments, but it also presents the arguments to give you the counter arguments. And so this way you can get, everything that you don't want to hear from the internet, you can get that very easily. How do you filter for that? The whole cybersecurity. I don't know if you know this, but on ChatGPT, you can say, prepare a presentation like today in the style of McKinsey. And so I'll get slides that look like McKinsey, or in the style of Harvard Business Review. In the same way, when you think of like cybersecurity, phishing scams, and things like that, once somebody, let's say, has access to anything I've written, they could say, well, write a text message in the style of Alon to his wife asking for the joint bank account number. All right, and so when you think of like the Nigeria scams and all of the silly emails that we see with 20 spelling mistakes that's saying, oh, could you help me? Can you send me your credit card information? Or friends saying, oh, I'm stuck on vacation in Thailand. I lost my credit card. Please send money. when they know exactly what language to put that in, so you really think that it's your best friend who's stuck in Thailand without money, just imagine how much more efficient these scams are. And these are scams that are already making millions. And when you can use this kind of precision, it just really goes out of to a different scale. And the last one is the whole critical thinking is that we're already very susceptible to fake news, and we know this. But when false is portrayed as true and vice versa, critical thinking becomes more and more difficult. And ChatGPT, we've already seen, very slippery slope. It speaks with confidence. It doesn't like to say, I don't know the answer to that. It'll actually wing the answer and give you the most probabilistic answer, but it doesn't really know. And it doesn't know the truth between truth and false. It just knows what more people are saying or less people are saying. And this is also going to be a challenge. We're talking about educating people in critical thinking, but it becomes much more difficult when our sources become AI. And just kind of a final thought before I pass the microphone to the next speaker is, we learn from Google every year what most people did their searches on. And it gives us a little bit of insight of like what people around the world care about. What I find fascinating is with ChatGPT, with the hundreds of billions of queries, people asking about their dreams and treating ChatGPT as a psychologist and telling them their deepest secrets, unfiltered, things that they would never dare to tell a real psychotherapist. They're able to take the ChatGPT. What will ChatGPT teach us about ourselves? Like, what kind of feedback will we see at the end of 2023? This is what humanity is asking about. This is what humanity is asking for. And I think we'll have a lot to learn about ourselves from AI. And that's an interesting switch, talking about Michael saying we give the data to the AI, but now the AI will give us some interesting data about us. And I think that would be quite fascinating. That's it. Thank you very much. I hope I respected the time constraint. And I just wanted to say that, Michael, your presentation was not just great, it was also beautiful. I have slide envy.
Okay, so time for one question. Alon, a quick question, please. No question. No, it's okay. One question. Okay, so speak loud. And a short one.
If we take ChatGPT from an investor background, not on its now situation, but in the beginning, in the first steps, what do you think was the arguments for investors to put money on this, knowing that it was so general and without a clear business model that usually we know from venture capitals and courses of entrepreneurial things? So what's your point of view about this in the starting point of ChatGPT?
Well, I think the brilliance of ChatGPT, and this is, people like Sam Altman, Elon Musk was one of the original investors, Microsoft was an original investor. Basically, what they were trying to do is say, hey, we can take generative AI out of the laboratories, out of the hands of scientists and researchers, and put them in the hands of consumers and businesses. And so this is kind of a consumer play on generative AI. And I think that was part of the vision, was saying, hey, we have a different animal here. If we package it for consumers, it doesn't have to be as powerful as the models and as precise as the models that you need in a scientific kind of context, like what we saw this morning. And it can be much more broadly applicable and much more quickly. And so, again, we know ChatGPT tells us a lot of silly stuff and things that are probably wrong sometimes, but most of the time it's pretty darn good. And if you know how to use it and you're intelligent, it can really be an enhancer for so many different areas. And I think that was clearly the vision. And if you see now, so quickly after it came out to the public and it's kind of beta tested, everybody's looking around to see, okay, nothing. Microsoft is already planning to integrate it in all of the Office suite of products. There's a company called Lex that does already integrates this into like a word processor. It completes your paragraphs for you. You just write the first sentence, it completes the paragraph. So this is the vision, really consumer facing and I guess business facing
So
AI.
I think the first decision, it was made out of the belief, not a financial projections or something like that. It was just a belief from the creators or the investors, and just they put money on it and they believed and dreamed on it, and now we can see its projections on business models, etc.
I don't think it was that. I mean, it was called OpenAI, but it was definitely a business first. And the idea was to make a business out of the generative AI space. So there was no noble intentions. And even if you look at their initial declarations, that it'll be a public good, and they very quickly went into private. And so they show that this is a capitalistic enterprise, and it was pretty much that from the start.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Thanks all for being here. I think it's been very interesting up until now. We learned a lot about data, and I learned a lot even before arriving. How necessary is the data, because I didn't check the weather forecast, and when I arrived, I put in my luggage a bathing suit, some Havanayas, and took just a spring coat, and I thought I would arrive in Morocco, and I arrived in Norway. It's like 0 degree, raining. So it's always good, to use data to take decision, and I will try to learn the lesson from that. So during the previous talk, not the one just before, but the one that, for instance, Michal gave yesterday, we talked about a little bit data augmentation. So I'm not good in mathematics. I'm a business guy. Probably in 1 kilometer around, I'm the worst in mathematics, including the cat, which is probably better than I. But we are using in my company data augmentation, so I'm going to try to show you the value of that. How does it work? This one? Okay. So I'm going to give you a short introduction about my company first. So we started in 2015. In 2018, we started to work with Israel Aerospace Industry, who became our design partner. In 2019, we had our first international client in Hong Kong. 2020, we got supported by Israeli Innovation Authority, and it seems like regular, but in Israel they are very, very difficult. So we were very happy and proud about it. In 2021, I don't know if I should say that it's thanks or because of the COVID, but with the state of aerospace, we had to expand in a new domain. And we were lucky to start working with Israel Chemical Limited. So we expanded to other industries. And in 2022, we started to work with Morocco. And this is one of the reasons why I'm here. The team that is heading the efforts regarding the issues regarding visual recognition is me. I'm in charge of what is related to product. Andras, who's an expert in computer graphic, and you will understand why his input is very valuable. There is Mohamed El Rabi, which helps us in things related to really pure computer vision, and Sébastien, who is an expert in data augmentation and machine learning. So what we're doing actually has been also recognized outside of just our clients and our mothers. we have also Aviation Week that I say that we're one of the company that could really transform the ecosystem of aviation. And we're focusing on a market that is actually a pretty big market, that is industrial maintenance, that is expecting to reach in 2028 $60 billion yearly. Obviously, we cannot address every part of this market, but it's just to give you an idea about what is the opportunity here. So what is the business case that we're trying to address that requires the usage of data augmentation? What happens is when you have a technician that is fixing an engine, what happens is once the parts have been cleaned, have been repaired and replaced, you have to put the engine together. And when you put an engine together, a plain engine, you are mandated to, every time you put a part, you have to go back to the manual, to the technical manual. And the issue is that sometimes it's hard to identify the part, so you're wasting a lot of time to identify the part and then find it in the technical manual. And the second business case is when you're a technician working, for instance, on a site, an industrial site, oftentimes, when you're doing the maintenance of machine, you have to replace parts or change part or whatever, and it's hard, once again, to find the identity, which is the part number, and people waste a lot of time because basically they don't know very well how to use the ERP, and the ERP is not designed for them. So a lot of time is wasted. They go around in the warehouse, wandering around trying to find the right parts, and it's a lot of time wasted. So what is the solution that we've developed? So we've developed Snapper that enables really in 3 easy steps to get to the result that you're looking for. The first one is that you capture the object that you're trying to recognize. The second one is that this object is being matched against the database that we have built with our partner. And the third one is according to the integration or the data that we have received. And this is about what you can do, the action you can perform. So how does it really work? Basically, we have a photo studio where we can actually picture the parts. Those pictures are being uploaded to the cloud. The cloud is, our cloud system is making some data augmentation. And once we have augmented the data, we train the neural network and enable the client to do the matching. So what does it look like? Not only it looks like me with a few kilos less and a few years younger, but it's also a full solution, very easy to install with the photo studio that you see on the right and the computer that you see on the left. And the way it looks like in the photo studio is that the goal is to really picture the part under every angle. So we have 3 cameras at different angles, pretty much every 15 degrees. And we have a turning table. And altogether, we pretty much capture every aspect of the part that could be captured. And this is the result that looks like in terms of user interface, meaning that once you picture the parts, it's being matched against the database, and you're offered several possibilities. You're offered those possibilities first because the accuracy is never completely perfect. Sometimes it recognizes very well, sometimes it's on the top 4, but also because when you're working with the aerospace industry, you cannot say, oh, this is the result, because you are not supposed to give the technician an order or whatever. You just can suggest things. So this is why we have also the confidence, like 0.073 or 0.063, and this is how we are able to work with the aviation industry. So this is what it looks like, for instance, in the Israel aerospace industry. So now, what is the value of data augmentation in this? Basically, what happens is when you train a neural network, you need, so not on every technique, but on the most used technique, you need a lot of data. And when you're in an industry like aerospace, and when you want to recognize parts, you're very unlikely to have a lot of natural data. It's not every day that Kim Kardashian is picturing herself with Nanjing parts, and that everywhere in the world people are doing the same, so you have a lot of data. It's not like what you traditionally do with cats and dogs, where you have a lot of data and labelized data. So the natural data is not enough. So if you really want to be able to perform the recognition, you have to add some more data above the natural data. And that is when comes the synthetic data. So synthetic data, I think we can separate two kinds of data. The first, that is semi-synthetic data, which means that you're starting from an existing data and you're trying to produce more data out of it, and I will show you how. And the second is fully synthetic data, which means that you're not starting from existing data, you're recreating data that is likely to be real. So what is the advantage of and the disadvantage of those techniques? The advantage is that once you have the basic model, it's easy to generate a lot of data and thus reach the data threshold. And then it's easy to label the data, in particular with fully synthetic data, because you know what is the data you're creating and you know where it's located in the picture. So it's very easy to create this data fully labeled. But the disadvantage is that in order to create the model that is going to generate fully synthetic data, for instance, it's very hard to design because you want it to be as close as the reality as possible, but it's very hard to make a data that really looks like the true data that you're trying to recognize. And further than that, once you train it, oftentimes, because there is pretty much always a gap with reality, you have a lower a lower result than you would have with natural data. So in our case, what does it look like? So we have few natural data, and the issue, and why we have decided to go with that. And the issue is that we are in an uncontrolled environment, which means that if we were in a very controlled environment and we knew that people would use it in a few selected places to perform the recognition, or if people would use the recognition in a white background, it would be very easy. Here, for instance, the first environment is the environment where the parts are located, which is a warehouse. So this is already an environment that can be very, very different, because according of where you are in the warehouse, you're going to have different lighting, you're going to have different backgrounds, and so on and so forth. The second issue is that then it's used in the plant, which means that in the plant, you have a lot of different places with different light, with different background, and the parts themselves are affected if there is dust or other stuff. So it makes it very difficult, basically, to generate, to get natural data that is really likely to be like every places where your system is going to be used. And the last issue is that the way people picture those data are sometimes with their hands. So it's very difficult to picture the hands of everyone working in the company and trying to have them recognizing the different parts. So how do we try to solve that through semi-synthetic data is the following. First, you saw in the photo studio that we create an environment with as little background as possible. So we picture clean, natural data, as you can see it here. Then we segment it. We take the background out of those data. And last, we try to generate new data out of it. What you see here is synthetic data that has been made by our CTO, and you see that the background is very industrial with the kind of things that you could see if you were working in a plant, and that he has added ends here and there in order to reproduce a situation where people would try to identify a part and would hold it in his hand. So this is how we try to make the neural network more robust and more used to what he may be facing in reality. So now I'm going to give you other example that are being used. It's interesting, I was discussing with someone from Siena today that is here, that was telling me that Siena has used such a technique in their process of maintenance, and then it worked very well. We have also used it for another case that we have done, that is to develop a first version of optical character recognition. So what you see here are parts of planes. More than parts is identification of plane. The first one is a plate, and the second one is a microperforated number. So what happens is that it's very difficult to recognize microperforated number. And the second thing is that the OCR in the real work work very well. Why? Because it's a white background with black character most of the time. So it's very easy to find to differentiate the character from the background. But here, in the second situation, for instance, you have a metallic background. So it's different levels of gray. We're not talking about something that is binary, which is one pixel, either white, either black. Here, it can be gray and different level of gray. And as a result, what we have developed is, so here I'm just showing you easy images, but we have developed a solution that can create some microperforated character. And we have also worked very hard, and Mohamed was part of this process, to make the problem that can generate the camera, which means that when you're picturing, you're making micro movement that on a microperforated character can make a lot of difference. And so we are trying to include that in reproducing and simulated the font. And further than that, we are trying to simulate the plate, because a plate is never as you see on the blue plate on the left, it's never the same. You have different type of characters. Some are going to be microperforated, some are regular, and so on and so forth. So you need to train the system to recognize and to operate in those kind of situations. So here we've really showed you very basic example. But this is what we have done, and this is how we have trained our neural network. This was the first version, but it was working pretty well, and we had no other choice, because there is not 10,000 of plate that exist, and even if there was 10,000, then it's a real headache to do some data labeling. So using here data augmentation enabled us to produce data in a much more convenient way. So now I'm going to finish with another example. So this is not from us. This is a company where a friend of mine works that is called DataGen. And what they have done is to be able to generate 50,000 faces of people, pretty random from every origin and so on and so forth, to train the neural network to recognize people. And this is also useful in the industry because, for instance, there was an issue in the industry. It was at some point to check that people wear a mask, or sometimes it's to check that they are wearing the equipment, such as a helmet, to protect them in their process of doing the maintenance. So the question is, how can you recognize that that someone has an helmet or not? Either you have natural data, which means that you have taken a lot of pictures of people wearing an helmet or not. Either you're able to use, for instance, those personas and adding an helmet or taking off the helmet or adding a mask or taking off the mask, and as such you're able to train the neural network to recognize whether someone has or has not those kind of security equipment. So this is another example, but there are a lot more examples, and I believe that Mohamed Setki here has one more to give you. So I wanted to keep it short because we have a very short time, but I'd be happy to discuss with you if you want to know more. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Sorry for because we are very short of time. So perhaps one quick question before wrapping up the session. A very quick question. And then I take the... No, so there is one question, so no. Wait for the microphone.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. It was so interesting. I'm asking a lot of questions because we are a startup that working in the field too, in AI. So my first question for you, it's a question that we are facing, especially in the fundraising part. So I'm gonna ask you, do you use hardware for your hardware so as to take images, etc.?
So this is interesting because maybe you've noticed at the beginning of the presentation that we started in 2015, and we started to work with our design partner in 2018, which means that it took 3 years. And what happened is that in those 3 years, we made a pivot. Originally, we were developing software for 3D printers, and we moved into what we're doing now. And what we're doing now, we're really focusing on using smartphones, smartphones and tablets, because what I've learned is that hardware is very complicated, and it's even worse if it's not your hardware and you're depending on. So you want to use, if possible, an hardware that exists and that is reliable and that is widespread. So we're not developing our hardware, and we believe that developing hardware and developing software and trying to do everything when you're a small startup is really complicated. So we try to focus on what we're doing.
So you've eliminated your hardware for the moment.
So we can pretty much be implemented on every tablet and every phone. So we don't develop our hardware, and we're agnostic to hardware.
Okay, so thanks. So we will stop there because otherwise we will. So you can continue discussion, of course. So we will restart. So we first thank all the speakers of this morning session. I think it was a very rich session, so it's time to applaud. Thanks all of you for being there. So we restart at 2:30 sharp because we have the end of the program this afternoon. So the lunch will be outside, so under the chapiteau and it's in the room for the speakers. Okay, thanks a lot. So and see you 2:30 sharp, where we will have a very interesting talk given by Antonio Espuña.